هذه حارتنا، حارة الشيخ جراح، المكون من 28 بيت. كل بيت فيه عائلة فلسطينية عايشة فيه، وكل عائلة فلسطينية لها قصة مع المستوطنين. هون بيتنا اللي تم الاستيلاء عليه 3/11 الصبح، ما كانش في حدا في المنطقة، واستولوا عليه بطريقة سهلة بمساعدة الشرطة الإسرائيلية.
سلام عم التخريم، سلام لي التخريم يا ابوي، التخريم سلام سومي يا خي، سومي يا سومي يا
The Israel-Palestine conflict began after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, but in the late 1800s, Jewish persecution in Europe was starting to get very bad. This was the growth of the Zionist movement, which claims that all Jews should have a nation where they can live securely. Biblically, the land of Israel is a promised land for the Jews, so migration to Palestine started as the persecution was getting worse. The land of Palestine became a land for Jewish refugees, and the population of Jews rapidly increased in the land. But at the end of the World War I and the end of the Ottoman Empire in 1918, Britain had mandate over the land of Palestine. Britain let more and more Jews migrate freely to the land, and during the Holocaust the number of Jews grew exponentially. In 1916, the Arabs revolted at the massive migration and against the British, who controlled the region. The Arabs had an uprising and fought back. The Jews and the British took arms and fought against the Arabs, and won. In 1947, British left Palestine and Israel was free to call independence. Again, the Arabs were not happy with this, so the United Nations proposed another plan.
As there grew, the United Nations approved a plan to divide British Palestine into two separate states. One for Jews, Israel, and one for Arabs, Palestine. The city of Jerusalem, where Jews, Muslims, and Christians all have holy sites, was to become a special international zone. The plan was meant to give Jews a state, to establish Palestinian independence, and to end the sectarian violence that the British could no longer control. The Jews accepted the plan, and they declared independence as Israel. But Arabs throughout the region saw the UN plan as just more European colonialism trying to steal their land.
This led to the Arab-Israeli War of 1948, which again Israel won and forced 700,000 Palestinians to leave their homes while at the same time increasing their borders. Neighboring Arab countries also kicked out Jews from their land, but most Jews migrated to the new state of Israel out of their own will, which has been repeating over and over again throughout this century. The Palestinians are the owner of the land. They're the indigenous people and is a nationality which includes Muslims, Jews, and Christians. Today, the Palestinians do not have a unified form of government, does not have an official military, does not have an official judiciary system. Palestinians only have their land, which is still being slowly taken away from them.
You are stealing my house.
And if I don't steal it, someone else is going to steal it.
No one is allowed to steal it.
The biggest protest of Palestinians happening in this month of Ramadan. But why are Palestinians protesting? Since 1967, after the Six-Day War, when Israel again expanded their borders and occupied the West Bank, and has been moving Israeli settlements into the West Bank, which is considered illegal by international law, condemned by the UN. Since 1967, more than 700,000 settlers have moved into the West Bank. Even the Supreme Court of Israel calls it an occupied territory.
The Supreme Court, and then you respond.
You're finding
the Judea and Samaria areas are held by the state of Israel in belligerent occupation. That is the view of the Supreme Court of your country.
The month of Ramadan is when the Supreme Court of Israel ruled 7 Palestinians' homes in Sheikh Jarrah are owned by Israeli housing company. The Palestinian arrests protested in their streets. The Israeli police used offensive measures to silence the protest. Israel is also slowly trying to take control of East Jerusalem, which is a Palestinian territory containing the Holy Mosque Al-Aqsa, a very historically important place for 1.8 billion Muslims.
Both Israel and Palestine claim Jerusalem as their capital. But after Israel seized most of Jerusalem in the Six-Day War in 1967, they've been in control of most of the city, including East Jerusalem, considered part of the occupied Palestinian territory. Under international law, none of this land belongs to Israel. But still, they've been controlling the city for the last 50 years.
This problem is a long one. The oppression and the discrimination and the persecution of the Palestinians needs to end. It all starts with lifting the restriction placed upon the Palestinian people, giving back their rightly owned lands, and giving them the same freedom the Israeli citizens have. The Palestinians and the Jews will have to live together because the reality is something that cannot be fully changed today. We have to take steps and stand with the Palestinians, who are a symbol of freedom and resistance all around the world.
Do you support the protests, the violent protests that have erupted in solidarity with you and other families in your position right now?
Do you support the violent dispossession of me and my family?
I'm just asking if you support the protests that are taking place in support of your family.
I support popular protests taking place against ethnic cleansing, yes.
Thank you very much for joining us. I really